Oasis Audio presents J.R.R. Tolkien by Colin Duriez, read for you by Simon Vance. Forward. There it was in the bookshop, a book called The Hobbit, with a cover picture of a dragon soaring, an arrow embedded in his breast. I picked it up and opened it. The runes and end-paper maps were intriguing. Quickly I bought the book and was soon following Bilbo's adventures as he made his way towards the Lonely Mountain. The author's name I recognized as a close friend of C.S. Lewis, an author I had recently discovered. I was reading his autobiography, surprised by joy at the time. The next time I visited the library, I looked under T. The 3 red cloth-bound volumes stood out. In great excitement I opened them. The Fellowship of the Ring had much more about hobbits. I borrowed it, the first of the 3 volumes of The Lord of the Rings, and began another stage of discovery. Today it is difficult to imagine a world without J.R.R. Tolkien's stories of Middle-earth and elves, wizards and hobbits. His is a household name from Tunbridge Wells to Toronto, Kyoto to Cape Town. Long before the successful movies, the books of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings had a global popularity. Their devoted readers included plumbers and postgraduate students, IT specialists and rich merchant bankers, car mechanics and teachers, pensioners and children. The Tolkien phenomenon began within the cultural upheavals of the 60s and created an unprecedented demand for fantasy and otherworldly stories like the Harry Potter series, the Twilight series, and others that fill large sections of bookstores around the planet. Who was the man who became a legend? Where did the stories and underlying mythology of Middle-earth come from? This is the story of an intensely private, brilliant, and eccentric professor in a specialist university discipline whose imagination was in touch with our basic hunger for stories that, like all stories that have stood out and survived over the ages, nourish the spirit. When he sought to get The Lord of the Rings, the fruit of a dozen or so years of writing, into print, he had difficulty in settling on a publisher. When he did, his publisher, though enthusiastic, treated the work as a loss-making venture, little realizing the wealth it would create both for the company and its author. Tolkien's own life was hit hard as an orphan, suffering financial hardship. His guardian for 3 years forbade him to even communicate with the woman with whom he had fallen in love. After his brilliance was eventually recognized at Oxford, he was traumatized by his service in the Battle of the Somme in the First World War. That is only part of the story of J.R.R. Tolkien. Behind the depths and richness of The Lord of the Rings is over 50 years of creation accompanying the languages, history, peoples and geography of Middle-earth, with a consistent mythology and body of legends inspired by a formidable knowledge of early Northwest European history and culture. Tolkien only became a legend by making a legend that has gripped the imagination of an astonishing variety of people throughout the world. There are a couple of technical necessities I need to point out. One is that I have kept to Tolkien's own pluralization of dwarf as dwarves when referring to such characters in his stories. As has become the custom when writing about Tolkien, the second is the necessity of distinguishing the Silmarillion, published in 1977, 4 years after Tolkien's death, from the vast number of unfinished drafts of stories, annals, lexicons, and accounts of the development of Elvish languages that Tolkien left upon his death. This vast repository is indicated as the Silmarillion because it was drafted as a particular part of the imagined history of Middle-earth that concerned the precious gems called the Silmarils, or relates to that period as its past or its future. The Silmarillion of 1977 is a concise and authoritative version drawn from the extant material and edited by Tolkien's son, Christopher Tolkien. I must acknowledge at least some of my debts to others in writing this biography. Over the years, I have witnessed an astonishing outpouring of high-quality scholarship on J.R.R. Tolkien, some of which has been particularly helpful in creating a biography. The late Humphrey Carpenter's official biography of 1977 is still indispensable.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?